The signal came screaming across the void, a desperate pulse of data encoded with terror. It passed through nebulae, skimmed past red dwarf systems, was bounced off ancient relay satellites long thought dead. Hundreds of civilizations received it, processed it, and dismissed it. The bureaucrats of the Zeltroni Concord filed it under unverified local disruption. The serene assemblage of calm didn't even bother decoding it. The Everin consensus labeled it a prank. But on the outskirts of the galaxy, where the stars burned colder and the worlds were less forgiving, someone listened. Captain Elias Cade stood on the command deck of the Vulture's Mercy, a warship from a world most species refused to name aloud. The message flickered in front of him, translated from the alien tongue into a voice trembling with pain and urgency. He didn't recognize the species, but he recognized the tone. It was the sound of someone calling out, not expecting an answer. Behind him, the AI assistant Riven coalesced into a hologram. Signal origin, Sector 84X, designation unknown. Probable Deathworld classification. 79% of message refers to mass extinction, hostile incursion, and an entity described only as the Bone Sovereign. Cade rubbed the scar under his jaw, a habit when thoughts turned sharp. 79% sounds like it knows what it's talking about. Also includes 16 separate instances of pleading, Riven added dryly. The bridge crew didn't speak. They'd seen too many lost causes turn into graveyards. Cade turned to them, eyes steeled. How many other ships received this? Riven blinked. According to intercepted traffic, approximately 2,600. 0 confirmed responses. Silence. Then Lieutenant Morella Solis, Tactical Ops, spoke. Of course no one's going. This is Reaper work. Whatever hit them, it wasn't pirates. Not civil war. That sounded like something worse. Cade nodded. Exactly. She frowned. So we're going? Yeah, he said, already walking toward the war map. We're going. Morella exchanged glances with the others. No protests followed. They were Deathworlders, humans forged on Earth, a planet so hostile the galaxy still debated how they survived it. Most species wouldn't step onto a world with apex predators. Earth had dozens. Most species evolved beyond war. Humanity had merely refined it. Still, they weren't fools. They had faced extinction more than once. They knew when to fear. By the next morning, the Vulture's Mercy was already en route, riding warp streams like a predator through dark waters. In the barracks, Private Garrett Baines ran diagnostics on his exosuit, hands moving from memory. The armor, nicknamed Dogma, had carried him through flame trenches and acid storms. But even it felt thin compared to the dread clawing at his spine. Sitting across from him, Elira Nix cleaned her rifle. Her skin was inked with the death marks of every battle survived. You believe this story? She asked, not looking up. He hesitated. You mean, do I believe there's a world begging for help that nobody's answering? No, she said. Do you believe the thing that's doing the killing isn't from this side of the curtain? Garrett looked up. What makes you say that? She leaned forward, voice low. Because when I replayed the message, I felt something listening back. Before he could answer, the intercom buzzed. All personnel to War Chamber. Mission brief in 5. The chamber was Spartan, metal, screens, a central holograph showing the target world, Veltora. Cade stood before it, eyes scanning the topography. Population, 93 million. As of last scan, down to 20,000. They're either underground, scattered, or dead. Civilian biosigns indicate severe psychological trauma. Atmospheric sensors report an anomaly in energy emissions centered in the equatorial region. That's likely where the Bone Sovereign is based. A murmur rippled through the room. Cade continued. We don't know if this thing is a weapon, a species, or something worse. What we do know, it's erasing civilizations. And the rest of the galaxy's too civilized to care. He let that hang for a beat. Which leaves us. The crew leaned in, the weight settling. We hit hard. Recon, rescue race. We bring survivors off-world if we can. If we can't, we make sure their last breath isn't taken in terror. You've trained for war zones. You've walked through hell. That was practice. He pointed at the burning mark on the map. This is the final exam. The drop to Veltora was brutal. The planet's upper atmosphere shimmered with unstable magnetics, forcing the Vulture's Mercy to deploy troops from low orbit in atmospheric pods. As Garrett's pod screamed through clouds laced with ash, he activated comms. Anyone else seeing what I'm seeing? The answer came in Nyx's voice. Yeah, it's like the world's bleeding. She was right. Below them, the land was torn in ribbons, rivers glowing with dark energy, trees petrified in agony. A vast city lay half sunken into the earth, its towers like broken teeth. Their pods landed hard. Dust and silence met them. Cade emerged first, his armor fully sealed, eyes scanning through multiple spectra. Squad 1 perimeter. Squad 2 scout west. Riven, deploy nanodrones for airborne mapping. They moved fast. In the ruins, they found bodies, some alien, some no longer recognizable as anything that had once lived. The remains weren't just dead. They had been unmade. Nyx crouched by a pile of ashes shaped like a person, untouched by wind. This wasn't decay, she whispered. It's like something erased the soul first. Then they heard it. A whisper, carried on the wind, in no known language. And the first of the enemy found them. The thing wore armor of fused bone and steel, eyes glowing with red malice, identical to the warlord shown in the alien message. It didn't scream. It didn't charge. It walked toward them like death given form. Solis opened fire. Her plasma rounds exploded against its chest, staggering it, but not stopping it. Garrett flanked left, launching a gravitic charge that cracked the ground, but the thing leapt, impossibly fast, slamming into one of the rookies. Private Lynn's scream ended in a wet crunch. Cade moved like a machine. His blade cut in a tight arc, shearing through the creature's neck. It fell, head rolling in silence. But more footsteps followed. The squad formed a circle, weapons ready. The air grew colder. Riven's voice cut in. I count 23 more entities inbound. Commander, permission to activate defensive drones. Do it, Cade snapped. Lights flared in the air as automated drones deployed, forming a shimmering wall of kinetic shields. The enemies surged, and the humans held. It was brutal. Screams echoed through the city. The Deathworlders fought not for glory, but because they knew what was at stake. When the last creature fell, they stood in the wreckage, breathing hard. Solis pulled her helmet off. That was the scouting party. Cade looked to the distance, where a dark tower loomed, casting shadows that felt alive. No, he said quietly. That was the welcoming committee. He tapped his comm, all units. Begin phase 2. We find the survivors. And we bring the war to whatever's wearing bones and calling itself a king. Above them, the skies rumbled, not thunder, but laughter. Something new they had arrived, and it was ready. The ruins of Vailtura whispered like a graveyard still unsure whether it was dead or merely forgotten. Skies hung low and bruised, thick with ash and static. The remnants of once proud spires leaned over broken boulevards, half swallowed by creeping black vines that pulsed faintly, as though drawing breath. Captain Elias Cade walked ahead of his team, boots crunching bone-dusted rubble. The air was heavy, oppressive, wrong in a way that defied sensors. His HUD flickered occasionally, as if the planet rejected technology on principle. Behind him, Lieutenant Mirella Solis adjusted her rifle's targeting array. Signal distortions intensifying. Something's interfering with electromagnetic calibration. This isn't natural. It's not supposed to be, Cade replied. Nothing about this place is. Private Garrett Baines scanned the crumbled alleyways, pulse cannon ready. He hadn't spoken much since they lost Lynn during the initial contact. No one blamed him. Lynn had been fresh from training, hopeful. That kind of hope didn't last long on a death world. Elira Nyx took point beside Cade. Her movements were silent, deliberate, every step guided by instinct carved through fire and blood. She hadn't stopped moving since they landed. There's something watching us, she muttered. Not drones. Not creatures. Something higher up the chain. Cade nodded once. I feel it too. They reached what was once a temple. Now a cracked husk with collapsed columns and shattered glass mosaics littering the ground like colored frost. But deep within, a faint signal pulsed, a biosignature alive. Riven's voice came through the comms, tinny and strained. One life form detected below ground level. Stable vitals. Possible non-hostile. Uploading descent coordinates. Cade raised a fist. Secure perimeter. Nyx with me. The two descended through the collapsed sanctuary, steps echoing into the dark. Bioluminescent mold clung to the walls, offering dim blue light. At the bottom, behind a rusted gate, they found her. She looked almost human, tall, silver-skinned, eyes too large for her face, robes in tatters. She sat cross-legged amidst a pattern of runes glowing faintly with protective energy. Her eyes snapped open at their approach, sharp with recognition. "You are not of the dark," she said. Cade stepped forward slowly, lowering his weapon but not disengaging it. "We're here to help. You sent the signal?" "No," she said. "I answered it." Nyx raised an eyebrow. "Explain." The woman stood. Though frail in appearance, she moved with the confidence of someone who had seen empires fall and survived them. "I am Athysa, priestess of the Veil Temple. We were the last line of defense, not with guns, but with memory. When the Sovereign came, we sent the signal, but it was a scream into a storm. I heard it, answered with the last of our psionic reach. You followed it." Kate studied her. "You said we. Where are the others?" She turned her face, and for a moment, grief transformed it into something ancient. "Gone. Taken or consumed. The Bone Sovereign does not merely kill. He harvests. He is building something. A new body. A god body. Every soul he takes adds to it." Nyx's grip on her rifle tightened. "That's why the dead fight like machines. They're part of him." Ithysa nodded. "He is Legion." Outside, a scream pierced the silence, raw, jagged, inhuman. Solis's voice crackled through the comms. "Contact. Multiple hostiles incoming. We've got a breach." Cade and Nyx were already moving. Back above, chaos erupted. The enemy came not in waves, but in tides, skeletal figures etched with molten runes, clad in mismatched armor, some still wearing scraps of civilian clothes. Each one carried the unmistakable presence of being possessed. Garrett and Solis formed a defensive triangle near the temple's entrance, unloading plasma rounds into the oncoming tide. A drone was torn apart mid-flight by a shadowy figure that moved faster than physics allowed. Garrett shouted, "They're adapting, learning our patterns." Cade emerged from below with Athysa in tow. "Fall back. Defensive retreat to rally point Echo 1. As they moved, the ground beneath them pulsed. Cracks widened. A monstrous hand erupted from the soil, blackened bone wrapped in living flame. It slammed down, scattering debris and nearly crushing 2 soldiers. The creature that pulled itself out stood nearly 3 meters tall, its head a helmet of fused skulls. The Bone Sovereign had sent a herald. It spoke with 100 voices, each stolen. "You should not have come." Cade didn't hesitate. "Riven, prep artillery strike. Designate the creature as priority 1. Confirming, the AI responded, but recommend full withdrawal. This entity exceeds current tactical projections. Nyx ignored the warning. She leapt onto a rubble pile and launched a cluster of shock grenades directly into the beast's midsection. Explosions lit the night, but when the smoke cleared, the creature still stood. "Confirmed," Nyx muttered grimly. That was too easy. The beast moved fast. Garrett barely dodged a sweeping strike that shattered a concrete column. He fired back, hitting its leg, slowing it only marginally. Ithysa raised her hands. A ripple of blue light erupted from her, striking the creature. It howled, not in pain, but in anger. "That won't stop it," she said, staggering. "Only delay." Cade gave the signal. "Pull out. Riven, call down that strike." A thunderous roar split the air as orbital cannons fired from the vulture's mercy, lancing down like divine wrath. The creature was engulfed in light. When the dust settled, it was gone. Not dead, just absent. They made camp at a scorched plaza, surrounded by what remained of barricades from a long-dead resistance. The silence that followed felt false, a breath held too long. Solis sat beside a smoldering fragment of wall, her hands trembling slightly. "It was speaking with their voices," she said. "I heard a child, a merchant, a soldier, all woven into one." Cade crouched nearby, "And it'll keep collecting more, unless we stop it." Ithysa approached, robes fluttering as if caught in a wind no one else could feel. "There is one chance. Deep in the capital lies the source of his power, a relic called the Hollow Star. It is not his, but he uses it to tether his soul to this plane. Sever the link, and his body becomes vulnerable. Then we take it," Nyx said simply. Garrett looked up. "Won't be that easy. The Sovereign knows we're here now." Cade stood. "Good. Let him prepare. Because we're not leaving this planet until either we're dead, or he is." The fire crackled. Beyond the ruins, the tower of the necropolis pulsed with faint, ominous light. Something waited there, something old, something hungry. And it knew their names now. Rain fell in ribbons, hissing as it struck the blackened stone of the necropolis. Each drop stank of metal and decay, as if the world itself were bleeding from its wounds. The ancient capital, once the crown jewel of the alien empire, now stood as a monolith to ruin, crowned by the jagged spire where the bone sovereign resided. The hollow star pulsed faintly from its peak like the heartbeat of a dying god. Cade led the team through a narrow alleyway choked with debris and twisted metal. Every shadow felt alive. Every silence, a trap. The mission was clear. Breach the spire, reach the hollow star, destroy the sovereign's tether. But clarity did nothing to dispel the weight of dread hanging over them like a second skin. Ithaisa walked beside him, her face tight with focus. The glow from the glyphs she'd painted across her arms shimmered in the gloom, barely holding back the psychic static that thickened the air the closer they got. "He knows," she said without looking. "Each step forward draws his gaze." "Then let him look," Nyx muttered, checking the seals on her gauntlet. "We're coming for him anyway." Garrett trudged behind them, more silent than usual. His armor bore deep gashes from the last encounter. His eyes, once bright with defiant energy, now held something colder. "Don't need to be loud to announce death," he said. "Just committed." Solis brought up the rear, her drones swarm mapping blind spots and weaving interference to keep their approach obscured. "I've been sweeping all channels. No outside help's coming. No ships near orbit, no rescue signals. It's just us." "Always was," Cade replied. "We're the ones who answer when everyone else turns away." They reached the plaza before the tower. It was littered with broken automatons, old wreckage, and the charred bones of the last defenders who'd tried to stand here. Above them, the spire loomed, its surface alive with moving bone and shifting metal. Carved faces, victims, perhaps, moved silently across its skin, mouths open in eternal screams. "I don't think this place was built," Solis said, staring. "I think it grew." "No difference now," Nyx answered. "Just makes killing it more personal." They advanced cautiously, but the doors didn't resist. Instead, they opened with a slow, sickening groan, welcoming, as if the sovereign had been waiting. Inside, the walls pulsed with veins of black light, and the air carried a resonance that shook bones rather than ears. Their ascent began. Each floor twisted reality further. On the third level, gravity fluctuated, pulling sideways and forcing them to climb along walls that behaved like floors. On the sixth, illusions assaulted them, visions of lost friends, old failures, alternate lives. Cade saw his sister, alive and smiling. He blinked once, and she was ash. "Don't trust your eyes," Ithaisa warned. "He knows how to tempt. Ignore it." By the ninth level, the team had begun to fracture, not physically, but emotionally. The tower fed on despair. Nyx snarled at hallucinations. Garrett whispered things under his breath he wouldn't repeat later. Solis kept her hands shaking at bay only through sheer mental force. But they climbed. Always up, always forward. On the 12th floor, they met resistance. A gate of black bone blocked their way, guarded by two abominations, twisted humanoids with spindled limbs and faces that split open to reveal glowing skulls. The team moved in unison, a deadly dance honed by pain and repetition. Nyx struck first, lobbing a disintegration charge into one creature's chest. Garrett followed, covering her with pinpoint blasts. Solis's drones zipped in and out, disrupting neural signals. Cade fired at the base of the other creature's spine, watching it crumble under concentrated assault. The silence afterward was ragged. Breathing, static, then only the pulse of the tower again. "We're close," Ithaisa said. Her voice was barely a whisper. "I can feel the star. It's awake." Cade looked at each of his team. Battered, burned, alive. They entered the final chamber. It was a cathedral of horror. The hollow star floated at the center, a crystalline structure shaped like a blooming flower made of shattered mirrors, suspended by tendrils of light and shadow. Around it, pillars of bone curved inward like a cage. Hanging from them were dozens, no, hundreds, of husks, the remains of other civilizations, their bodies harvested, their consciousnesses likely devoured. And beneath it stood the bone sovereign, Now fully formed, his frame was massive, an amalgam of fallen warriors, priests, scientists, and innocents. His face constantly shifted, flickering between his victims. He radiated power like a dying sun. "You are late," he said, his voice a harmony of stolen tones. "I had hoped for more time, but I see now you are perfect." The final offerings. He raised a hand, and the chamber erupted into chaos. Energy surged outward. Cade's shield crackled violently. Solis's drones were scattered like insects. Garrett was thrown across the room, landing with a sickening crunch. Cade shouted orders, already moving. "Form around the star. Protect Athisa." Nyx engaged the Sovereign directly, her blade igniting with plasma as she slashed at joints and weak spots. She moved like lightning, but each strike barely dented him. "He's regenerating too fast." "Because of the star," Athisa screamed. "It feeds him." Cade turned, then cut it off. Solis, bloody and limping, crawled toward the star's base. "I've got one shot. Overload protocol. It'll drain everything I've got left." "You sure?" Cade asked. She gave a grim smile. "Never been more." As Nyx kept the Sovereign distracted, Solis reached the base and wired her core to the star. The light changed, shifting from dark crimson to brilliant white. The Sovereign paused, recoiling. "No," he hissed. "Not from within." "Yes," Solis whispered, pressing the trigger. The chamber exploded in light. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then the light faded, and the hollow star shattered, its pieces vanishing like smoke. The Sovereign screamed, not in rage, but in agony. His form flickered, cracked, then disintegrated, piece by piece, as though unraveling. When it was over, the tower began to collapse. Cade helped Athisa to her feet. Nyx supported Garrett. Solis didn't move. They carried what they could, sprinting down twisting corridors now turning to dust. The walls cried out as they fled, and the screams of the tower faded behind them. They emerged into the ash-choked dawn. Behind them, the necropolis crumbled. The spire imploded, sinking into the earth like a beast returning to its grave. None of them spoke for a long while. Finally, Athisa turned to them. "You've broken the tether. The Bone Sovereign is no more. His hold on this world is undone." Cade looked toward the rising sun, its light the first warm thing they'd felt in days. "Then it's over." "Not over," Nyx said quietly. "Changed." Garrett nodded. "This place remembers." They began walking toward the dropship, toward the sky, toward whatever came next. Far above, stars flickered, watching, waiting, and somewhere, across the void, another world cried out. This time, someone would answer.